Have you ever wondered why some foods we call healthy might actually shorten your life? Or why products labeled low-fat or sugar-free often leave you more tired, hungrier, and even less healthy? And here's the real question: what if the foods you've trusted for decades aren't really foods at all? Hello, my friends, I'm Dr. Nana, and today on Senior Health Boost we're going to uncover the top 10 foods you should avoid if you want to live a longer, stronger, and healthier life. Stay with me, because I'll not only give you the list, I'll explain why each one of these so-called foods may be quietly damaging your body. Now, a lot of times we see articles or hear people say, don't eat this, don't eat that. But without the explanation, those warnings don't really stick. That's why in this video, I'm not just telling you to avoid certain foods, I'm going to break down what happens inside your body when you eat them. Once you understand the consequences, you'll naturally want to make better choices for your health. Notice something important. I even put the word foods in quotation marks. Because here's the truth: just because something can be chewed, swallowed, and sold in a package doesn't mean it's real food. Real food should give you fuel, nutrients, and the building blocks your body needs to repair itself. It should also include the catalysts like vitamins, minerals, and enzymes that help you turn that fuel into usable energy. That's what whole food is. But when we take those foods and process them, when we strip out the natural fats, add in sugars, dyes, or stabilizers, we're left with something different. We're left with non-food. And non-food doesn't just fail to nourish you, it can actually poison your body's delicate balance. Think about it. Your brain is receiving over 1 billion signals every single second from your muscles, your joints, your organs, even the environment around you. Health means being able to process those signals, to balance energy, and return your body to homeostasis. A poison, on the other hand, blocks or distorts those signals. And sadly, many of the things we eat every day fall into that category. That's why in this series, I'm going to walk you through a list of 10 foods or non-foods to avoid, starting from number 10 and counting down to the absolute worst offender. So let's dive in. Number 10 on the list: non-fat and low-fat products. Yogurt, milk, sour cream, mayonnaise, salad dressings, even peanut butter. Anytime you see low-fat or non-fat on the label, what that really means is that nature's design has been tampered with. Fat gives food flavor, texture, and that satisfying mouthfeel. Take it away, and manufacturers usually replace it with sugar, artificial flavors, and stabilizers. The result? A chemical concoction that looks like food, but isn't. Remember this: if nature put fat there, it's usually for a reason. Unprocessed foods contain healthy fats that your body needs. Strip those away, and you're not getting healthier, you're just eating something fake. Now, moving down the list, let's take a look at number 9, deli meats. This is where things get a little more complicated. In the last section, we talked about why low-fat and non-fat products can be deceptive and harmful. Now, let's move forward down the list, because the deeper we go, the more shocking it gets. Number 9, deli meats and processed meats. Let's be honest, most of us grew up eating sandwiches, hot dogs at ball games, or cold cuts from the deli counter. On the surface, they seem harmless. But here's the truth: once you add in the sugar, nitrates, preservatives, and artificial flavors, what started as meat turns into something far from real food. Take hot dogs, for example. Who really knows what's inside them? Sometimes the amount of actual meat is so shockingly low that you're left with mostly fillers, chemicals, and mystery ingredients. I was talking to a friend recently, and he joked that in some places, a hot dog has so little real meat, sometimes just 10 or 20%, that they should call it bread. And honestly, he wasn't far off. Now, does this mean all deli meats are terrible? Not exactly. There's a difference between good and bad. If you find meats from animals raised naturally, without chemical additives, nitrates, or fillers, they can actually be a nutritious option. But those cheap, mass-produced, chemical-laden versions, avoid them like the plague. Number 8, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, where things get a little scary. GMOs, or genetically modified plants, are foods where scientists have altered the DNA. The biggest culprits you'll see on the shelves are corn, soy, and sugar beets, but they're not the only ones. Why does this matter? Because GMOs are like playing genetic roulette. These modified organisms can interact with bacteria in your gut, potentially creating entirely new strains. They can even produce pesticides or chemicals inside your body that nature never intended you to consume. Imagine your body trying to process something that has never before existed on this planet. That's exactly what happens with GMOs. That's why it's so important to choose non-GMO labeled foods whenever possible. And even better, go for organic versions of vegetables that are at high risk of being genetically modified. While organic isn't a 100% guarantee, it dramatically lowers your risk. In short, GMOs are an experiment and your body shouldn't be the test subject. Number 7. Commercial oils and deep-fried foods. Let's move on to something almost all of us encounter daily: vegetable oils and fried foods. Now, the name vegetable oil sounds healthy, doesn't it? But here's the catch. These oils don't actually come from vegetables at all. They're usually seed or bean oils like canola, soybean, safflower, corn, or sunflower oil. The problem is that these oils are mostly polyunsaturated, which makes them incredibly sensitive to heat, light, and oxygen. That means they oxidize and go rancid quickly. To make them last on store shelves, manufacturers use harsh chemical processing. By the time that oil reaches your kitchen, it's already far removed from anything natural. But it gets worse. These oils are loaded with omega-6 fatty acids, which are pro-inflammatory. Chronic inflammation is one of the driving forces behind diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Now imagine what happens when these oils are used for deep frying. At restaurants, the same batch of oil gets reheated and reused again and again. Each time, the oil becomes more toxic. By the time that basket of fries or fried chicken lands on your table, you're not just eating food, you're eating a toxic cocktail of damaged fats and chemical byproducts. Does this mean all oils are bad? Absolutely not. Natural fats can be incredibly healthy. Think about extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, butter, or ghee. Those are oils your body can recognize and process. If you squeeze an olive, you get oil. Simple, natural, and nourishing. But those chemically altered seed oils, they're a recipe for disaster. So, as tempting as deep-fried foods might be, especially when you're out at a restaurant, remember this: those oils have been used dozens of times before your plate arrived. If you must eat fried foods, make them at home using stable oils like butter or coconut oil, and even then, keep it to an occasional treat. Number 6. White flour and modern wheat. Next on the list is something nearly everyone has in their pantry: white flour. On the surface, flour might look harmless, even comforting. After all, it's in bread, pasta, cakes, and countless baked goods we've grown up eating. But here's the hidden truth. White flour is one of the most nutritionally empty substances we regularly consume. Here's why. Whole grains, in their natural form, contain nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and fiber. But those nutrients also make flour less shelf-stable. To extend shelf life and make it easier to mass produce, manufacturers strip away the nutrient-rich parts. What's left behind? A processed powder with almost zero nutritional value. And it doesn't stop there. In many cases, chemicals are used during processing, tainting the flour even further. The end result? You're eating something that not only lacks nutrition, but also spikes your blood sugar, stresses your pancreas, and contributes to inflammation and weight gain. Modern wheat itself has been hybridized so many times that it's far from the wheat our grandparents ate. The proteins, the gluten content, and the way our bodies react to it have all changed. It's no surprise that so many people today struggle with wheat sensitivity or outright gluten intolerance. Think of white flour like this. It looks like food, it tastes like food, but inside your body, it acts more like sugar. It burns fast, leaves you hungry, and provides almost nothing of lasting value. So far, we've exposed the hidden dangers of deli meats, GMOs, commercial oils, and white flour. Each one might seem small on its own, but together, they create a daily storm of toxins, inflammation, and nutritional emptiness. And we're only halfway through the list. Up next, we'll keep counting down and uncover even more surprising foods that could be quietly stealing your health. You won't want to miss what's coming next. This rewrite is expanded by about 20%, more vivid and engaging, while staying faithful to the original meaning. Natural storytelling style, with smooth transitions and rhetorical touches. When nutrients are stripped away during processing, what's left behind is little more than starch. It can sit on a shelf for months or even years without spoiling, but that shelf life comes at the cost of health. And here's something most people don't realize. The wheat we eat today is not the same wheat our ancestors consumed thousands of years ago. Ancient civilizations relied on grains like emmer and einkorn. Later came varieties like spelt and comet, which still retained much of their natural integrity. For centuries, humans ate only a handful of grain species. But in the last 50 years, everything changed. Through constant hybridization, genetic manipulation, and selective breeding, scientists created modern wheat with a single goal: increase yield. They wanted a crop that was resistant to pests, weather, and disease, a crop that could feed the world cheaply and abundantly. On the surface, that may sound noble, but here's the problem. Health was never the objective. Nutritional value, digestibility, and human wellness weren't part of the equation. The result? A grain that looks like wheat, but behaves very differently inside your body. If you've ever wondered why gluten sensitivity and wheat intolerance seem to be everywhere today, modern wheat is a big reason. Its protein structure is not the same as the grains our bodies adapted to over thousands of years. And while people often say, but humans have eaten grains for 10,000 years, the truth is, they haven't eaten this kind of wheat. For a deeper dive, I recommend the book Wheat Belly. It documents in detail how modern wheat was created, what it does to your metabolism, and why it's best to avoid it completely. Think about how much of the average grocery store is dominated by wheat products. Entire aisles are packed with breakfast cereals, crackers, waffles, breads, cookies, and snack bars. Now picture the average kid's cereal. What do you find? Refined wheat flour, GMO corn, mountains of sugar, artificial colors and flavors, and then almost as an afterthought, synthetic vitamins sprinkled on top. That's not real food. That's a chemical experiment disguised as breakfast. So here's the bottom line. If it's made from modern wheat or white flour, it's not doing your health any favors. Whether it's cereal, toast, or packaged snack cakes, the damage is the same: empty calories, blood sugar spikes, inflammation, and long-term consequences for your gut and your brain. Number 5. MSG, monosodium glutamate. Now we move into an entirely new category. Up to this point, we've talked mostly about foods that are stripped of nutrition, overly processed, or genetically altered. But now we're stepping into something much more sinister: chemicals that act as direct poisons to your body. One of the most common offenders is MSG, or monosodium glutamate. You've probably heard of it before. It's widely used as a flavor enhancer in soups, sauces, snacks, frozen meals, and especially in processed fast foods. But how does it work? And why is it so dangerous? MSG mimics glutamate, a natural neurotransmitter in your brain. Normally, glutamate is used by your nervous system to send signals to spark communication between neurons. But when you consume MSG from the outside, it tricks your brain and your taste buds. It excites your taste receptors, making ordinary food seem richer, more savory, more addictive. In other words, it makes junk food taste irresistible. For food manufacturers, this is a dream come true. They can use cheap ingredients, cover them with MSG, and suddenly you're hooked. You think you're eating something delicious, when really, your brain is being chemically manipulated. The real danger, though, goes far beyond taste. MSG belongs to a group of substances called excitotoxins. Here's what that means. Think about your muscles after a tough workout. They burn, ache, and eventually shut down because they've been overworked. The same thing can happen to your brain cells when exposed to MSG. The neurons get overstimulated, pushed into overdrive until they either burn out temporarily or die permanently. You don't feel it the way you feel sore muscles, but the damage is real. This effect is sometimes called the Chinese restaurant syndrome because people notice symptoms like headaches, dizziness, or brain fog after eating foods loaded with MSG. But the truth is, it's not limited to Chinese food. It's in thousands of packaged products sitting on grocery store shelves today. And here's the scariest part. Excitotoxins don't just make you crave more food. They can kill brain cells, disrupt normal brain function, and increase the risk of long-term neurological problems. All for the sake of making processed foods taste a little better. So ask yourself, do you really want to let a chemical trick your brain into destroying itself, just for a temporary burst of flavor? We've now reached a turning point. The foods we've covered so far, white flour, modern wheat, and MSG, show us just how far we've drifted from real nourishment. Some of them rob your body of essential nutrients, while others actively poison your brain and nervous system. But we're not done yet. As we continue down the list, we'll uncover even more surprising foods that quietly sabotage your health every single day. And the next one on the countdown? It's something many people use without even thinking, but it can wreak havoc on your body in ways you never imagined. This rewrite is about 10% shorter than the original. It keeps all the original meaning, removes timestamps, replaces Doctor with Dr. Nana, and flows in a natural storytelling tone. It uses vivid imagery and rhetorical touches but avoids unnecessary additions. In the last section, we explored MSG and how this so-called flavor enhancer acts like an excitotoxin, tricking your brain into overdrive and then leaving it exhausted. Now, let's take a closer look at where MSG hides, before moving on to the next major offenders in our list. Number 5 continued, where MSG lurks. If you think you're safe because you don't eat Chinese takeout often, think again. MSG is everywhere. In fact, nearly all canned soups contain it, especially the ones labeled flavorful or hearty. The same goes for flavored chips and snacks. If it says barbecue, sour cream and onion, jalapeno, ranch, or cheddar, there's a very good chance MSG is inside. Even salad dressings, particularly ranch, owe much of their signature taste to MSG. Without it, ranch just wouldn't taste the same. Food companies know this, which is why they rely on it so heavily. So the takeaway here is simple. Know what MSG does and avoid it whenever possible. Number 4. Sugar. Now we get to sugar, and here's the interesting part. Unlike MSG, sugar isn't technically a poison. It does provide fuel for the body. But the problem is, sugar comes stripped of nutrients, stripped of balance, and far too easy to overconsume. The danger lies in the dose. A little sugar in its natural form, say, from a piece of fruit, can be fine. After all, everything plant-based is essentially glucose. Trees, grass, fruits, vegetables, they're all built on the same basic sugar molecules. But refined white sugar and high fructose corn syrup? Those are completely different stories. They're concentrated, processed, and unnaturally easy to consume in massive amounts. Think about soda, sweet tea, or flavored coffee drinks. On a hot summer day in the South, people can sip on sweet iced tea by the gallon and not even realize they've just ingested the sugar equivalent of multiple cans of soda. And what about energy drinks? Don't be fooled by the marketing. They don't give you energy. They give you sugar, caffeine, and a handful of synthetic stimulants. It's the same with fancy coffee drinks, the frappuccinos, the caramel lattes, the flavored whipped concoctions. They're not coffee. They're liquid candy bars in disguise. This is why sugar has been called the root of all evil when it comes to diet. Not because it's inherently toxic, but because it's so deeply embedded in our culture, our celebrations, and even our daily habits. From muffins and waffles to pancakes with syrup, candy, and baked snacks, sugar surrounds us everywhere we turn. So how much is too much? Most people are shocked when they actually count their intake. Dr. Nana recommends limiting added sugars to no more than 5 to 10 grams a day. Anything more, and sugar quickly acts like a drug, addictive, habit-forming, and damaging. And let's not forget the burden it places on the liver. High fructose corn syrup, in particular, forces your liver to work overtime. Over time, this contributes to fatty liver disease, insulin resistance, and the very conditions that set the stage for diabetes and heart disease. Bottom line, sugar may not be a direct poison, but when consumed in the refined, concentrated forms we find in today's processed foods, it becomes one of the most destructive forces in modern diets. Number 3. Margarine. Let's talk about margarine, a product that for decades was actually marketed as a healthier alternative to butter. But here's the truth. Margarine is one of the most artificial, man-made foods ever created. It starts with highly processed vegetable oils, usually canola, soybean, or corn oil. These oils are already unstable, often rancid from harsh refining methods involving high heat, high pressure, and chemical solvents. On their own, they're bad enough, but then the process goes further. To make margarine spreadable, manufacturers bombard these oils with hydrogen molecules under extreme conditions. This chemical reaction changes the oil's structure, forcing it into a semi-solid state. The result is the creation of trans fats, a type of fat that doesn't exist in nature. And here's why that's so dangerous. When you eat trans fats, your body doesn't know how to handle them. They get built into your cells and tissues, but because their structure is unnatural, they disrupt normal cellular function. Over time, this raises inflammation, damages arteries, and dramatically increases your risk of heart disease. Even mainstream health authorities, which for years recommended margarine over butter, have now changed their stance. Trans fats are so harmful that food manufacturers were forced to list them on nutrition labels. And slowly, governments around the world have moved to ban them entirely. Why? Because they are the only substance on food labels universally recognized as a direct poison. Think about that. Out of everything we eat, margarine stands out as a laboratory creation with no place in human nutrition. It was invented to be cheap, convenient, and spreadable, but it came at the expense of our health. So while butter and natural fats were demonized for years, margarine quietly took their place, fueling inflammation and disease. Today, the truth is clear. If you care about your health, avoid margarine at all costs. So far, we've seen how MSG tricks your brain, sugar overwhelms your body, and margarine poisons your cells. These are not just empty calories or minor indulgences, they're powerful disruptors of health, deeply embedded in modern diets. But the countdown isn't over yet. The next items on the list may surprise you even more, because they hide in foods many people still believe are healthy. And once you understand what they really do inside your body, you'll never look at them the same way again. This rewrite is 10 shorter than the original. Doctor is replaced with Dr. Nana. Timestamps removed, punctuation polished. In the last section, we talked about margarine, the artificial fat that sneaks its way into your cells and disrupts their normal function. But the story doesn't stop there. To understand just how damaging it can be, let's look at what happens inside your body when margarine and trans fats replace natural fats. Number 3 continued. The cellular impact of margarine. Your body doesn't just use fats for fuel. Fats also form the very structure of your cells, specifically the cell membranes. These membranes act like intelligent barriers, deciding what gets in and what stays out. In a way, they're like tiny semiconductors processing signals, regulating communication, and keeping your body's systems in balance. Now, here's the danger. When your diet is full of trans fats from margarine, your body doesn't break them down properly. Instead of using essential fatty acids to build strong, flexible membranes, your body starts substituting with whatever fats are available, including trans fats. That means your cell membranes, the gatekeepers of your health, become stiff, distorted, and dysfunctional. The result? Faulty signaling, poor energy production, and widespread disruption. This breakdown has been linked to virtually every major disease, including cancer. Sadly, this is one of the biggest reasons fat earned such a bad reputation in the first place. Decades ago, when researchers looked at people developing heart disease, they saw diets high in fat. But what they didn't realize at the time was that most of those people weren't eating butter or natural fats, they were eating margarine. The wrong conclusion was drawn, and butter was blamed for what margarine was actually causing. Number 2. Donuts, cakes, and frosting. Now let's move on to the second worst offenders on this list, and they're some of the most tempting. Donuts, cakes, and frosting. Why are they so harmful? Because they combine nearly every problem food we've discussed so far into one destructive package. Donuts are deep-fried in damaged oils, loaded with trans fats, packed with sugar, and made with modern wheat. Add in dough conditioners, artificial colors, and chemical flavorings, and you have what may be the single worst food for your body. They provide virtually no nutrition while hitting you with multiple toxic elements at once. Cake might not be fried, but it's still built on refined white flour and sugar. And then comes the frosting, usually made from shortening, which is just another form of hydrogenated vegetable oil. In other words, it's margarine in disguise, spread thickly across every slice. It's almost as if these foods were designed to deliver the maximum number of harmful substances in one bite. But here's the thing. Life is full of celebrations, birthdays, and special moments. Does that mean you can never touch cake again? Not necessarily. If you really want dessert, there are healthier alternatives. Keto and paleo recipes, for example, use almond flour, coconut oil, and natural sweeteners to create treats that satisfy without destroying your health. Should cake or donuts ever become a staple? Absolutely not. But as an occasional indulgence prepared the right way, they don't have to be a source of guilt or long-term harm. Number 1. Artificial sweeteners. Finally, we've reached the number 1 worst food on the list: artificial sweeteners. Unlike sugar, which at least provides fuel though in harmful amounts, artificial sweeteners aren't food at all. They have no nutritional value, no function in the body, and no safe role in human health. Instead, they act as neurotoxins, chemicals that directly interfere with the brain and nervous system. Let's break them down. Aspartame, sold as NutraSweet, the worst offender. When broken down in the body, it produces formaldehyde, yes, the same chemical used in embalming fluid, methanol with alcohol, known to cause blindness, and excitotoxins that overstimulate and damage brain cells. It's a triple threat of toxicity. Sucralose splenda, another widely used artificial sweetener that alters gut bacteria and strains the liver and kidneys. Saccharin sweetened low, one of the earliest substitutes, linked to a variety of health risks, despite decades on the market. Acesulfame potassium ACE rarely sold on its own, but often blended with other sweeteners in diet products. The problem isn't just that these chemicals are unnatural, it's that they actively cause harm. Aspartame, in particular, has been associated with neurological symptoms, autoimmune conditions, and liver and kidney toxicity. In fact, in the first decade after its release, aspartame generated more formal complaints to the FDA than any other food additive in history. Manufacturers market these sweeteners as diet-friendly alternatives to sugar. But the truth is, they don't solve the problem, they make it worse. They trick your brain, disrupt your metabolism, and expose your body to toxic byproducts. Instead of protecting your health, they silently undermine it. Transition to next section. So, there you have it, the top 3 offenders: margarine, donuts and cakes, and artificial sweeteners. Each one is more damaging than the last, and together they represent some of the greatest threats to long-term health in our modern food supply. But here's the good news. Once you know what to avoid, you can begin to rebuild your diet around real, whole foods. And in the next part, we'll talk about what true nourishment looks like and how you can shift away from these toxic non-foods toward a way of eating that truly supports energy, balance, and longevity. This version is 10 shorter than the original. It stays true to the content, while making the storytelling more engaging for an American audience. Doctor is replaced with Dr. Nana. Timestamps are removed, and transitions are smooth. Ends with a clear lead into the next section. We've just uncovered the single worst offender on this list: artificial sweeteners. And I can't stress this enough, they are not food. They are laboratory chemicals, created to trick your taste buds while silently poisoning your body. Aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, ACE, all of them belong in the same category: synthetic compounds that never belonged in the human diet. Each has its own dangers. Aspartame breaks down into formaldehyde, methanol, and excitotoxins. Sucralose, known as Splenda, is a chlorocarbon, chemically related to pesticides like DDT, many of which were banned worldwide for being carcinogenic. Think about that for a moment. Do you really want something in your coffee that has more in common with a bug killer than with actual food? And the sad reality is they're everywhere. The hidden places artificial sweeteners lurk. The most obvious giveaway, of course, is in diet sodas. Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, and all the endless variations of sugar-free soft drinks line the shelves. But it doesn't stop there. Low-calorie yogurts often contain them. You think you're making a healthy choice, but you're really loading your body with toxins. Chewing gum used to be simple: regular gum with sugar, or sugar-free gum with artificial sweeteners. Today, even the so-called regular gum often has both sugar and artificial sweeteners just to make the flavor last longer. Packaged foods and light desserts are filled with them. Frozen snacks, protein bars, flavored waters, the list goes on. If you're not actively checking ingredient labels, you're probably consuming these chemicals without even realizing it. That's how deeply they've infiltrated the modern food supply. The false promise of artificial sweetener shares the cruel irony. People often turn to artificial sweeteners because they want to cut sugar and lose weight. But research shows that these chemicals don't actually help with weight loss. In fact, they may do the opposite. Why? Because they confuse your body. When your brain tastes sweetness, it expects calories to follow. But when those calories don't arrive, your metabolism gets tricked, your hunger signals go haywire, and cravings intensify. Instead of eating less, many people end up eating more. It's a vicious cycle marketed as a solution, but designed to keep you hooked. And then there's the addictive element. These sweeteners overstimulate your taste buds in ways natural foods never could. Over time, real food like fruit or vegetables begins to taste bland by comparison. Your palate gets rewired, and suddenly, nothing seems satisfying unless it's artificially sweetened. Better alternatives exist now. Does this mean you have to give up sweetness altogether? Not at all. Nature gave us alternatives that the body can tolerate much more safely. Stevia, a natural plant extract, provides sweetness without toxic byproducts. Monk fruit extract, another natural option, has been used in traditional medicine for centuries. Even sugar alcohols like xylitol or erythritol, when used in moderation, are far safer than aspartame or sucralose. Personally, the only soda I'll ever touch is one called Zevia. And no, I'm not sponsored by them. I just appreciate that it uses stevia for sweetness, with no artificial flavors, no artificial colors, and nothing toxic. If you're trying to break free from diet sodas, switching to something like that is a smart step. Bringing it all together, so let's recap. From low-fat products that replace natural fats with chemicals, to deli meats filled with nitrites, to gummies that tamper with DNA, to commercial oils that fuel inflammation, to white flour stripped of nutrients, to MSG that poisons brain cells, to sugar that overwhelms your metabolism, to margarine that rewires your cell membranes, to donuts, cakes, and frosting that combine every bad element imaginable, and finally, to artificial sweeteners that trick and damage your nervous system. Each one of these so-called foods chips away at your health, your energy, and ultimately, your longevity. The lesson is simple. These are not foods. They are man-made products, engineered for profit and convenience, not for human health. But here's the empowering truth: you have a choice. By avoiding these toxins and choosing whole, real foods instead, you can take back control of your health. You can strengthen your body, sharpen your mind, and add healthy years to your life. The final word: think about it this way. Every bite you take is either feeding disease or fighting it. Every sip you drink is either fueling inflammation or fueling health. Once you see food for what it really is: fuel, building blocks, and catalysts, you'll never look at the grocery aisle the same way again. And here's my challenge to you. Starting today, take just one of these harmful categories off your plate. Maybe it's giving up diet sodas. Maybe it's cutting back on sugar. Maybe it's swapping margarine for real butter. Every small step counts, and every change you make builds toward a healthier future. I'm Dr. Nana, and I want to thank you for joining me on this eye-opening journey through the 10 foods you must avoid if you want to live a long, healthy life. If this video inspired you, imagine what your life could look like if you began applying these lessons every day. So here's what I'd like you to do. Hit the like button, share this video with someone you care about, and make sure you subscribe to Senior Health Boost. This channel is dedicated to giving you the tools, the knowledge, and the encouragement you need to thrive as you age. And trust me, what we've covered today is just the beginning. Because real health isn't about quick fixes or miracle products. It's about understanding how your body truly works and making choices that honor it every single day. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Take care of yourself, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.